Hey guys, I'm Summer with BELLA+CANVAS, and today's video is all about achieving the ultimate soft hand print. Working with a water-based or soft hand ink is trickier than your traditional plastisol, but it's an art form worth mastering. There's nothing worse than when a super soft garment is printed with a big plastisol print that ruins the hand feel and the drape of a garment. In this video, we're going to show you how to get a super soft tee from start to finish, from the fabric down to the print.
Soft hand printing is like the ultimate retail printing effect. We're actually working with the garment instead of working against the garment. We're not just laying a patch of ink on top of the garment. The print actually becomes part of the garment. So that's the basic idea behind soft hand printing. The soft hand printing technique should really complement the garment. Generally, you would be looking for a softer fabric. The lighter weight the fabric, the better effect that you're going to have. It's just a compatible technique to the garment. So today we're going to be working with both polyviscose flowy tee as well as a tri-blend raglan. The ink of choice is a soft plastisol for both designs. Soft hand is the obvious print method for that fabric. It's really the fabric that is determining the printing method. The Be Different lifeguard print, it's really just a vintage graphic that we started with, and I think it's the perfect complement to the graphic to print with the soft hand technique. We can achieve soft hand printing through a few different print methods, all of which use low viscosity inks. So whether that's water-based or what we would call a soft hand plastisol ink, the idea is that we're putting a very, very low viscosity ink down into the garment instead of printing on top of the garment. If you're not used to doing water-based ink, it can be very challenging because it tends to want to dry in the screen. That's the most common problem that people have. If you're working with a discharge ink, the biggest challenge is making sure that the garments that you're working with, both the fabric and the color, are compatible with the discharge technique because we're actually printing the ink down into the garment and removing the dye from the garment, so the dyes and the inks have to be compatible. We do testing on, generally you're looking for a 100% cotton shirt using reactive dye, but not all colors will discharge. So we do testing on every garment that we're going to print a discharge ink onto. So when we're working with the soft hand plastisol, I like to use the analogy, it's like painting with watercolors. So if you paint with watercolor on a white paper, you're going to get a beautiful result. If you paint with watercolor on a black substrate, you're not going to see the paint at all. So it's the same thing with soft plastisol ink. If we're working with soft plastisols, we try to stick with whites, neutrals. If we have to print a soft hand print on a darker garment, that's when we would go to discharge inks. Discharge inks obviously have an issue being compatible with the fabric, the substrate, and the color that you're printing on. We actually print water-based and discharge ink very often through 225 mesh, which is somewhat unheard of for water-based printing when people typically would be using like an 86 or a 150 mesh. It's definitely can be a little bit tricky working with the highly detailed print. High mesh counts with water-based ink. The #1 issue is screen clogging or the ink drying in the screen. So there are certain techniques that you can do in a production run to keep the ink from clogging. Obviously, it's just keeping the press running, but when the press stops, you have to immediately clean out the screen with water to make sure that the ink does not dry in the screen.
That's a wrap for this video. We'll see you next week in the final video in our innovation series.